Florida Native Plant Society in the field, we tend to enthuse over the abundance, variety, diversity of Florida wildflowers like this fall scene we have right now. For instance, this particular flower in the aster family is the rayless or stiff sunflower that one would think has lost all its petals, but it never had any petals. This is the whole flower. And this flower is attractive to the pollinators just as much as the one with pretty yellow petals are. We are actually in the great Apalachicola flatwoods of the Florida Panhandle, a physiographic regime that stretches for way over 100 miles at this, and we're in the Apalachicola National Forest. At this spot, we are about 4 miles east of the Apalachicola River and say 25 miles north of the coast, and we're surrounded by the longleaf pine wiregrass ecosystem. And by the way, we are close enough to the landfall of Hurricane Michael 2 Octobers ago that you can see its effects on some of the trees. They're leaning pretty severely, some of the longleaf pines within sight of us here. This is a fire-dependent terrain. If you look at the trunks of the pines, you see charring on all of them, because this ecosystem, to be what it is and to have this diversity of wildflowers, simply depends on the fire sweeping over it at intervals not too far apart. We're at a place where the land slopes down from upland or mesic situation to a cypress head, and on that slope, which I suspect is a seeping slope, water oozing out the face of the slope, we have progressively wetter conditions behind us here, and we're going to see a different suite of wildflowers there. But just before we go over the brink of the slope, have a look at the aster. This is called the coastal plain chaffhead. It's a little perhaps a little deeper purple, but it's another lovely wildflower that just over to our left is in a great dense patch, but it's very abundant in this habitat in the fall. And you don't go 3 feet before there's another thing to enthuse over. For instance, another thing in the aster family, this one a goldenrod, the anise-scented goldenrod. The leaves, when crushed between your fingers, give you an anise scent, stronger in some leaves than in others. You get some of it in this particular one I have. But the anise-scented goldenrod is one of quite a few goldenrods that we have in Florida, and there are so many it's rather hard to separate some of them. The garden spider's leading the tour for the moment with his web, see, from the gallberry, which is a holly, over to the flat-top goldenrod, yet another goldenrod, no, not really a goldenrod, a different species, but the common name is goldenrod, but the spiders use that for one end of his web. Gold and purple are a theme in the Florida Panhandle in autumn, so we've had the goldenrods. Now here's another in the aster family. This is hairy chaffhead. Another goldenrod, the wand goldenrod. Good name for it because it has a wand-like stem, very flexuous, and the same golden flowers at the top. This goes with the moist pine flatwoods of Florida. This plant with the white flowers is not an aster. This is actually in the carrot family. This is Angelica, coastal plain Angelica. And this is a host plant for the black swallowtail butterfly's larvae. This little plant that's just less than 10 inches tall and growing up amidst the thick wiregrass is called drumheads. It's in the genus Paligula. This delicate rose lavender color, and one of quite a few Paligulas we have here, but one of the really beautiful ones. We're moving down the slope into the upper part of bog conditions. Looking here at a little white flower known as the shortleaf lobelia. Lobelias being in the bellflower family. This is one of quite a few lobelias in the Florida Panhandle, the shortleaf lobelia. In the upper zone of the bog, another aster. This is Bigeloia, the so-called rayless goldenrod. It's not a real goldenrod, but common name rayless goldenrod. Very common in the wet flat woods and upper parts of bogs like this. Progressing a little further down into bog conditions, we come to this flower with the loveliest of lavender petals and a lot of petals. This is also in the aster family. This is Chapman's aster, named for the great botanist Alvin Chapman, who lived the last many years of his life on the coast of the Panhandle here at Apalachicola. This is a plant of the wet flat woods and bogs, Chapman's aster. We've reached the level of the bog now where we come to that icon of Florida's carnivorous plants, the yellow pitcherplant. This is the one that grows tall like this, and we have quite a patch of them in this particular bog. But this is the one that, of course, takes insects down its goozle. They don't come back out. They get digested. The pitcher plants are the genus Sarracenia. This one is Sarracenia flava, the yellow pitcher plant. This aster is what's making that great yellow show behind us here. This is a coreopsis, or tick seed. This is the Texas tick seed, Coreopsis lenifolia. Strange, we think of things from Texas as big, but of the Texas tick seed and the Florida tick seed, this Texas tick seed's flowers are considerably smaller than the Florida tick seed's flowers. This one is Texas tick seed, which obviously likes this bog very much. Here, arising in the midst of a great patch of yellow pitcher plants, is this aster, which is a tremendous component of the great golden show of wildflowers in the wet flat woods and bogs of the Florida Panhandle every fall. This is the narrow-leaf sunflower. Sunflower is a translation from Helianthus. Helianthus sunflower. The narrow-leaf sunflower has these, as its common name suggests, narrow, long, linear leaves, and they're scabrous or sandpapery. Just a beautiful yellow gold color that is very abundant. This plant's very abundant in the wet ditches of the highways of the Florida Panhandle every year. And the glistening stalks here are called thread dews. That's another carnivorous plant of the Florida Panhandle. These mucousy stalks, glistening with mucus, trap the little bugs, and they end up getting digested. These glisten so that you can pick them out with your eye at quite a distance, even as you're driving along. This is parasitic, the sundews. Carnivorous. This is parasitic. This is a false foxglove, one of a number of false foxgloves, the genus aculenus that we have here in the Florida Panhandle. Lovely purple color. So parasitic here, carnivorous here.
What is the false foxglove parasitic on?
Well, it's said to be parasitic on the roots of pines. Obviously it has not killed the pines, so they get along okay, but it's parasitic on their roots.
So it's sort of like beech drops and American beech trees.
I forget if those are parasitic or not, but...
I think they are parasitic on the roots.
On the root, yeah, okay. Is yet another aster of the bog. This is the honeycomb head, one flower honeycomb head. This is a plant that once the petals are gone and the flower head turns brown will last like that, especially if you take the dead flower head indoors and make a dried arrangement with it, and it'll last for years. One flower honeycomb head. There are two pitcher plants in this bog, and this one is not the yellow pitcher plant, but this is the parrot pitcher plant, Sarracenia psittacina. Among those animal adjectives like serpentine and porcine and aquiline, psittacine means parrot or parrot-like, and if you look at the leaf of this plant, it really does have a configuration like a parrot's head and beak and breast. It has an orifice under the parrot's throat that the little bug goes in, never to come out again, gets digested. So Sarracenia psittacina, the parrot pitcher plant, which is a plant of these wet bogs. We were speaking a minute ago of a parasitic plant. Here's another one that may be considered parasitic. It's certainly a plant with the distinction of having these purple stems, and most of the leaves are purple by this time of year, which must have something to do with its common name being black senna. This is the genus Samaria, or black senna, sometimes called Yopon black senna for a reason that I know not. Another aster that's so common and frankly makes a nuisance of itself in your yard sometimes is this silk grass. It's really a pretty little yellow flower, and it's called silk grass. It's not a grass at all. It's the genus Pityopsis, that genus of aster, but it has a silvery sheen to the foliage, and we're back up in the somewhat elevated land now. This is not a plant of the bogs, but it's very, very common in the habitat it does occur in. One would think at a glance that you have two different wildflowers to identify here, the purple one and the white one. In fact, they're the same species. We have a white color phase and the typical purple color phase of the hairy chaffhead. This is another aster in the genus Carphephorus, or perhaps now it is called the genus Trelisa, but color phases, two color phases of the same species.
Nice way to spend Sunday afternoon, right?
The variable leaf sunflower, much like the narrow leaf sunflower we looked at a few minutes ago, but this variable leaf has an almost leafless stalk, which is, when it's almost leafless or indeed leafless, it's called a scape rather than a stalk. And this flowers just before the narrow leaf and flowers with a little bit larger flower. And this one's already finished its flowering. In this bog we've come upon a nice patch of the wand goldenrod. They have this way of waving in the breeze. It's really graceful and give you you see why it's called a wand goldenrod, waving like a wand. In this particular bog we're in right now, here's the dense blazing star, Liatris spicata, still flowering. Lovely flower and a tall one. Sometimes this is in massed stands. It makes quite a scenic impression. But it's one of about 8 Liatrises we have up in this part of Florida, and it's a beauty. The scene in front of us here is composed almost entirely of the Texas tick seed, a coreopsis. This is how thick it can occur on wet prairies like this one, a wet prairie running over to a cypress head. Another characteristic scene in the Florida Panhandle, first the trees. In the foreground, the 50-foot tall tree is the black gum. This is in the same family as the Tupelo tree from which the Tupelo honey comes, but just reminds you that Florida Panhandle has sort of a foliage season too. The leaves of the black gum are turning red now, and it'll get redder by Thanksgiving. And behind that, the cypresses are getting their fall color also. Those will be pond cypresses, I believe. But lower, closer to the ground, the waving stalks of grass 10 feet tall are a plume grass, the sugarcane plume grass it's called. This is in the same plant genus as the sugarcane of commercial importance. And indeed the genus is named Saccharum. And this particular native plume grass is called sugarcane plume grass. One could be excused for thinking they were looking at a little patch of one kind of blazing star, one kind of Liatris here, but actually this one is the dense blazing star Liatris spicata we looked at a minute ago, but this one is different. This one's flower heads stand out on the stalk a half-inch long, and so this is the slender blazing star, Liatris gracilis. 5 times as long as wide. Okay, and well, we've moved the party 7 miles south now into a different habitat. Right now we're standing in what will be called high pine land, evidence the southern red oak, and another one behind us here, and the longleaf pines, of course. High enough we even have a chinkapin sprouting here. So for a few minutes we're going to be in highland and looking at a different suite of plant species than we were looking at before. This mint is a salvia. It's Salvia jurea, azure blue sage, and it's also called giant sage. And it is the most beautiful saturated blue in these flowers that have an exquisite form also. Azure blue sage. This is about the third lobelia we've dealt with today. This one is a lobelia of highland, and while I'm not absolutely certain, I think it can be identified as a downy lobelia. Has a deeper saturation of lavender in the flower color than the previous ones we saw, lobelias we saw today. Here's an aster of high dry site that's called hawkweed, the genus Hyraceum. Hawkweed, and it also has this not too pretty name of queen devil. But you can encounter this in a lot of the high, well-drained places in the Panhandle. Here's another blazing star. That is another Liatris. This one has a stalk so slender and from a little distance away you might think it a leafless stalk, but you find out when you move your finger over it that it does have indeed many little leaves on it, but it has a very narrow inflorescence. Short leaf blazing star, Liatris tenuifolia, grows on high, well-drained sites. And this Liatris happens to be standing right above another plant of a lot of interest, because this is it's rare because it's an endemic to Florida, and in an extremely narrow range at that. This is scareweed. It's a legume. The legume Baptisia simplicifolia, scareweed. Its global range is only 5 North Florida counties. This one we're in, which is Liberty, plus Franklin, Wakulla, Leon, and Gadsden. This can be called Florida's tumbleweed. In the winter, when it's dead and dry, it's apt to break off at ground level, and it doesn't take too much of a breeze to tumble it across these woods. The legume scareweed, genus Baptisia. We have to all gather and blow our breath on it real hard. This white flowering legume is another plant characteristic of high dry sites like this. This is the legume summer farewell. Scientifically it is Dahlia pinnata. The vanilla plant, or vanilla leaf it's sometimes called. Many people say that at a certain stage you can get a vanilla smell from these leaves. I really never have been able to, but this is a brother species of that hairy chaffhead we were looking at earlier in the morning. And vanilla plant is a plant of drier sites than that. It's on a dry site here, of course. This plant responds spectacularly to fire. Fire produces a great flush of flowering of vanilla plant. Most of what used to be in the genus Aster in Florida, now that there's no longer a genus Aster in the state, most of them are in Symphyotrichum, a long word, and this is one of them. This is the, I call silver aster. It may be one of 2 different possible species, but the genus Symphyotrichum, silver aster, common on high land. Another legume. This is the little very prickly plant called sensitive briar. Its genus is Mimosa. The species is Mimosa quadrivalvus. Common in the high sandy lands. Beautiful flower. Many flowers in this flower head that my finger is under. Well, we had the good luck earlier in the trip to run into one member of the carrot family, that Angelica that was flowering. Here's another member. Now this one has finished its flowering a while back, but this 3-foot tall inflorescent stalk is that of Orangium yuccifolium, which is, as I say, in the carrot family. This one has the strange name of button rattlesnake master, and the plant is rough feeling to the hand, everything about it, including the leaf edges, which are lined with these fairly stiff bristles. Very distinctive plant. Being in the carrot family, its host is certain the caterpillars of certain butterflies that we mentioned earlier. False foxglove, Agellinus, we've come upon earlier in the day. Here's a different one. Leaves completely different than what we saw before, and much larger flower, well over 1 inch across. These are a beautiful color and a beautiful configuration of the flower. There are a number of Agelenices foxgloves that can be a little difficult to separate. I could not say at the moment what the species is here. And 4 feet to the right is another Agelenus species yet. The genus of plants in the gentian family that are known as rose gentians are doubtless called that because of their flower color being a lovely rose gentian, but there are exceptions in the genus. Here is a rose gentian species that flowers snow white. And the rose gentians are the genus Sabbatia within the family gentian. But this Sabbacius brevifolia, flowers white in real moist pinelands like this. By the way, we've come downhill quite a bit from the suite of plants we were just looking at and getting close to a bog situation. But at this particular elevation and moisture level, we have the white flowering shortleaf rose gentian. We've made our way downslope to wet prairie or bog conditions once again. We see here around us the same suite of plants we've seen at similar sites earlier in the day. The Texas tickseed here, the narrowleaf sunflower, the lovely Chapman's aster, the lavender thing, various liatrices, blazing stars here. But the reason we've come here is to add a third species of pitcherplant, a third Sarracenia species to what we take home to remember today, not the plant but the memory. So we're going to proceed ahead into this bog and see who can first spot a hooded pitcherplant. In the process of finding it, I expect we'll see more yellow pitcherplants and parrot pitcherplants, but we're going for the hooded pitcherplant. Well, our perseverance has been rewarded. Actually, this is not the first clump we've come across, but this is a nice clump of the hooded pitcherplant, Sarracenia minor. This one has a different leaf configuration than either the yellow pitcherplant or the parrot pitcherplant we looked at previously. This one has a hood that curves over a rather large opening, much larger, rather large in comparison to the parrot pitcherplant. The hooded pitcherplant and the other pitcherplants hybridize with each other a lot of times, and I would not say this is a hybrid. This is a typical hooded pitcherplant, Sarracenia minor, but it's a third kind of pitcherplant, carnivorous pitcherplant that we've seen today. This one has these white patches that are said to be like windows for the sun to get in, so that the insect trapped inside goes for those windows rather than try to crawl back out the top. I guess he thinks he's getting out when he sees the light through the window. That's what that's said to be, how it's said to function. This, by the way, is at the very west end of the occurrence of hooded pitcherplant in Florida. Now the yellow and the parrot that we looked at before have ranges that go on out through the panhandle a long way, but the hooded pitcherplant's range is way down in the peninsula and just this far out into the panhandle. We're just about at the west end of the Florida range of the hooded pitcherplant. venture into the Apalachicola flatwoods for fall wildflowers is about done now. The day's gotten pretty hot and we've gotten tired. So we've seen a lot of species and I loved all of it myself. And we'll be back out here another season.